All right. Habit dominion. I want to talk through these five things. We'll keep it quick. We're going to talk about outcomes and inputs, talk about designing habit loops with some, drawing on some information that we just looked at from those two books, and then how systems sustain your inputs. And then something that I've been thinking about a lot, and this comes from a conversation with my wife last night of sequential loading. And then we'll finish with looking at consistency and how that is what is more important than timelines. Outcomes and inputs. Okay, I think there are two kinds of goals generically that we can look at. One would be an outcome oriented goal, and one would be a input oriented goal. And so, outcome oriented, it's something, it's a result that you desire. Like, hey, I want this outcome, I want this end state. That is what I desire. Uh, the problem with it is partially uncontrollable or fully uncontrollable. You don't control all the variables and the factors, but you still want that outcome. An example could be uh, I want to buy a house this year. And then you look at input oriented goals. And these are things that are actions you 100% control. They're things that are easily repeatable and measurable. An example would be instead of just saying, hey, I want to buy a house this year, would be I want to analyze 3 properties and submit one offer a month until I buy a house this year. And so the input oriented goal in this example, you're like, I 100% fully control the ability to analyze real estate offers and then submit my own offer. You don't 100% fully control if you're going to buy a house because maybe things with the lender take too long. Maybe the inspection on the property reveals something. You're like, dude, that is not what I want. We're going to back out of this. There's so many reasons. Maybe the seller cancels. There's so many reasons. If we looked at fitness, you could say that, hey, outcome is I want to be able to bench 225. And you're like, can you get there? Yeah, potentially. Or you could say, hey, input oriented is I'm going to commit to do 100 push-ups a day, every day, the whole year. And so they're different in terms of one is 100% controllable, your input, the outcome. It's like, you could probably do that, but you can't control everything. Whether it's, and a lot of guys, especially men, will be like, yeah, I can control my strength. It's like, well, I hope so. I hope you don't get injured. I hope that you're able to, your body adapts correctly to your workout program and you can achieve that. But if you were to take looking at getting a six pack similarly, it's like, yeah, you could input goal. You could say, hey, I'm going to work out 5 days a week. Uh, Outcome goal though, you're going to have to say, hey, I want that six pack. Well, there's so many other input goals that could go into it. They have to do with hydration, they have to do with rest, they have to do with cardio, they have to do with diet. There's so many things that go into the six pack goal that it's not just, hey, I'm going to do crunches. It's more like, hey, I'm going to eat this protein heavy diet. I'm going to drink this much water a day. I'm going to get at least 8 hours of sleep every night. I'm going to make sure I do zone 2 cardio this many times, hit cardio this many, like the list goes on. And so when we differentiate between an outcome oriented and an input oriented goal, the input oriented goal is usually simpler. It's 100% controllable by what you do. Whereas the outcome, it would require a either full control over many more variables or a much more expert level knowledge over what are all the variables. Because sometimes the reason for having partial control in an outcome oriented is you don't even know what all the variables are. And so when we look at these two things side by side, the how we apply this to us is saying the outcome that you desire, it sets your course, and the input is like the actual path you walk to take to get there. And so you might say, hey, I want to make say you want to grow your social media. Hey, I want to get 10,000 followers in 2026. And it's like, hey, that's cool. You just set the outcome. You said that is the course I want to take. And then your input would be something like, I'm going to post once a day, every single day for the next 365 days. And that is the path that you're going to take to get to that course. And we could give 15 more examples, but the point is for input, it relies on your discipline and therefore a habit that you are creating. So let's talk about creating a habit, designing habit loops. Habit loops, they follow basically what we just looked at, right? Cue, craving, response or routine, and then reward. And looking at the two experts, I'm not going to reinvent this. I'm going to say, yes, that is exactly what a habit loop is. But when we say forming a new habit, how do we do that? What does that mean? And to form that new habit, I would argue, you need to establish a routine that preserves the cue and the reward part. And so, just like James Clear talks about in his book, saying, let's design the environment to set you up for success. For me, having structure in your routine is what is going to preserve the triggering cue and the reinforcing reward. And then you design what you want for that routine to be. Then we talk about systems. When you have a system and we have the input oriented goal, the system is what sustains the inputs, the discipline that you're putting into this thing. The system would be everything that's upstream. And so if you design the system correctly, then your desired behavior is easy, and undesired behavior is something that will cost you. It will be painful. And I gave the example at the beginning of my wife's protein intake goal. She wants to have 125 grams of protein per day. And you could say, okay, are you going to try to hit, 2/3 of that by lunch? Are you going to space 5 meals throughout the day with 25 grams per meal? What does it actually look like to implement? But then we look upstream of it. Before we're talking about daily execution, we talk about, well, it would be wise to meal prep that will increase your efficiency and increase your likelihood of success. Well, what are you going to meal prep? Well, let's make some menus, and you keep backing it up. Well, then you need a grocery list, and then you need a budget and all the things that support it. And so for the input to be successful, designing a correct system that accounts for everything that supports it and goes into it and builds that infrastructure is what will make the newly formed habit sustainable. And then if your system doesn't support the habit, then the habit won't survive reality. Life will hit, and you're like, hey, I want to eat my 25 grams of protein for 5 meals a day, or I want to average it out to 40 ish for 3 meals a day. But then reality hits, and it's like, well, shoot, I don't have time today. And because I didn't meal prep, I'm not getting the desired protein intake level. And I just missed a day and am delaying my progress on this habit. This applies to everything, I think, your work life, your purity life, prayer, all the things. The system, designing the system is what is important. Then this is something that I spent a lot of time thinking about is the sequential load of it. And so if you think that it's January 2026, I'm going to take on these 10 new goals, I'm going to accomplish all of them this year, I'm saying good luck. I don't know if you're going to be able to do that. But if you do one at a time, I think, and maybe even one per month, I think you will crush it and you'll get them all done this year. And so, especially when it's input oriented, because input oriented is really coming down to your discipline, your time management, your ability to create a new habit and follow through and do it. And so, I argue that habits must be layered one at a time until that new one becomes automatic, and then you add the new layer and you load these things up and you layer them on top of each other. And if you put too many at once before the previous one has settled, then you risk failing. And so if you try this mass adoption method of, hey, it's January 2026, here's my 10 new things I want to do this year, then I think you'll have cognitive overload, your willpower level will deplete, and you won't be able to accomplish the things. Then if we reference James Clear and tethering your habit to the identity of who you are becoming, I think it will have identity lag when you diffract your focus in so many different ways for mass adoption. And then potentially it'll just collapse under the stress of I'm trying to do all these things. As opposed to if you picked one thing at a time, then you work on that until that one habit becomes unconscious. You just do it, and the decision cost is near zero. You're like, yeah, this is what I do. For me, I wake up, I drink electrolyte water, and then I drink creatine, and I've already drank a quart of water within a couple minutes of waking up. It is not even a decision. It is, I just do this. There's nothing that prevents me from doing this. And then additionally, your identity will naturally shift into the man you are becoming when you sequentially layer in the new habits. And then finally, consistency is it beats timelines. It's more important than. There's different science. Some experts say, hey, it takes 21 days to form a new habit. Some say it takes 66 days. I don't know. We are together for 90 days in this program. And I argue that the number of days does not matter as much as the habits that become permanent when they stop requiring negotiation. And you just say, this is what I'm doing. And I look at the loop of saying your consistency trains your identity, and your identity is what sustains the consistency. And so it feeds itself in a healthy way. And if you look at the 90 days that we're together, behind the scenes, there are habits that I am trying to implement in your life And the most important one of them is let's start with the gratitude that leads to worship. And then let's look at wisdom and read Proverbs together every single day. And I think that that is probably if you got nothing out of our 90 days together except that, then I think mission accomplished. Your life will be changed forever in the best way possible. And there's other things, obviously, now as we talk about discipline in pillar 3, we are implementing morning routines. And so these are habits that I am trying to impart to you. But consistency is what matters. So your takeaways are that outcomes is what sets your course. Your input determines your path to get there. Your systems is what sustains the effort. That is the infrastructure that you design, the environment, per James Clear, that you are creating intentionally to help carry you forward to success. You install those systems per habit, and then you layer your habits sequentially. And then consistency is what reinforces the man you are becoming, your identity. And so a affirmation for this would be, I am a man of action who partners with God's divine wisdom to create systems, implement habits, and achieve my goals. And the two questions for you to consider are, what systems can you build in 2026? And then what order should you layer them? Because you are a high achiever, you are ambitious, and I imagine you have more than one thing you want to do in the calendar year 2026. And I would say, what is the base layer, almost the keystone habit that you want to establish first, and then build on top of that? And so that is our teaching for today.